And aboard with us, we're going to bring in Michael Allen, who is Managing Director of Beacon Global Strategies. He's also a former special assistant to President George W. Bush in the national security sector. Michael, thank you for joining us. I want to ask you just, first of all, about this thing that the U.S. did. I mean, this was a really risky venture. I think a lot of us were expecting a different kind of action, a forced toppling, even possibly an extrajudicial killing, before we expected them to fly helicopters into Caracas, pick him up like some sort of Jack Ryan episode and fly him to a carrier. What are the risks involved in an operation like this? And is this something that you think should or should not have been approved, although it did appear to go as planned?
Well, Christina, I agree with you. This is extraordinary. At most, I thought the president would do airstrikes overtime in an effort to back up his diplomacy and try and get Maduro to leave. To actually send the Delta Force in these great numbers with so many different helicopters and do the raid that they did is extraordinary. I'm surprised it worked so well, apparently, although there are details that are to come. But I just thought it was a very, very bold move, and it seems so far to have paid off.
We understand, Michael, that the U.S. Army Special Ops Unit, Delta Force, is in fact the unit that conducted this whole operation, specializing in counterterrorism, hostage rescue, and special reconnaissance. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago, knowing that material was coming from Fort Bragg in North Carolina and other areas where Delta Force and Army Rangers were being used. Speak to us about the delicate nature of this operation and exactly what they pulled off. Apparently, according to the president, Maduro and his wife were pulled out of bed by these special forces.
It's really amazing. First and foremost, I think we need to think about the intelligence that went into this. There are already reports of recruited CIA agents across the Maduro spectrum that were able to inform us of his whereabouts, his pattern of life, where he is and what he does in the final few days, including, it seems, where he was going to bed and where he was putting his head down at night. I think that enabled the Delta Force to come in such extraordinary precision, really a pinprick. What do they need to take out in the general vicinity, but how quickly can they get in and out of a reinforced house with guards and the like? So they must have really rehearsed this. This was really well done. It's another tribute to the way our national security enterprise works. The intelligence community, hand in glove with the special operators. We've honed these types of techniques over the global war on terrorism, and I think we were able to use them to great effect today.
Right. I mean, I remember when they did the bin Laden raid. I mean, I've talked to Admiral McRaven about this. You know, they built up a mock set. They ran drills. I'm assuming we think they did something similar for this, right? They're not just going to send these Delta Force guys in there blind. They would have rehearsed this, which means they would have had that intelligence as to where he was for how long? At least a week, 2 weeks? How long of a lead time do you need to pull off an operation like this?
I bet they've had a layout of the presidential palace for some time. And then once they were able, and they probably had a replica of it, over time, as they were able to collect more intelligence about, were there steel doors? Where did the guards stand? I think that helped them sort of enliven a possible practice scenario. But I think it took some serious amount of time. It was a hugely risky operation. When you think of the others, like about 5 years ago today when Trump took out Qasem Soleimani, I mean, that was a drone strike. So we were way far away. To send troops in on a daring mission was high risk. I hope that we hear at 11 o'clock or soon that there were no U.S. casualties. There have been none reported. But this was a bold, out of our minds sort of operation, and it's incredible that this worked. And now it's time to sort of secure the after effects of this, the harder part of it, but this is amazing.
Well, there were some injuries, so there were
true.
some casualties, but no deaths, and we're hoping to get some more details about that when Trump speaks shortly. Sorry.
Yeah, I'll be curious to hear what he has to say. He mentioned that to Fox, but said there were no dead.
Right.
That's truly the extent to our knowledge.
And what does
there.
that mean? Was there a firefight? Was it more
Exactly.
difficult than we've been led to believe? Was it not as smooth of an operation as it seems on television? But
All these are the real questions that we have for the president here. Michael, I understand that you're at an undisclosed location in the Caribbean, having had a flight canceled. AFP is reporting that the airspace is essentially closed, that commercial airlines have been told to stand down. And I find that interesting, having seen what Senator Mike Lee mentioned on social media, on Twitter earlier, that the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, told him there would be no more strikes around Venezuela. How do we describe this moment we're in right now?
Well, I think that's probably his intention, not to do any more strikes on Venezuela, but I don't know how they can guarantee that at this particular junction. It's great that Maduro and his wife are on their way to face justice, but what they need to do now is somehow engineer a democracy, or to install one of the Democratic elected leaders. And I know your previous guests were talking about Ms. Machado. She seems to be the right one. But I'm looking forward to the president trying to outline for us what's next. If it's no more military action, how is he going to force a new government to govern Venezuela so that we don't just perpetuate what's happened the last 30 years under Chavez and then Maduro, which is essentially a corrupt, kleptocratic regime that robbed its people, stole its natural resources, and led to widespread misery. So there's a lot to do here. It's different from Iraq and Afghanistan in the sense that we apparently are not going to have troops on the ground. But in a sense, that makes it harder, because how do we effectuate our will if we have no one there? We can do it from the air, but it's a little bit tougher to do. So we need to hear the plans going forward, so we don't look back in this in 6 months and say that was all for naught.
Well, stay safe in your travels, Michael Allen. It's great to have you with us from Beacon Global Strategies.